Hi, welcome to Words of This Life podcast. My name is Pablo, and here we share real and impactful Christian stories from believers who love the Lord and His Word. Through these testimonies, we want to showcase the virtues of the one who's called us out of darkness into His marvelous light. Virtues that are at work in everyday people, shaping their character, guiding their actions, and shining forth His life into the world. We're so happy you're here with us for this episode, and let's get right into it. Welcome back to another episode of Words of This Life. We're glad you're joining us again, and we're here bringing you another wonderful testimony. We're joined today by our good friend and sister, Jennifer. Jennifer, thank you for being here with us today, and we're looking forward to hearing your testimony and your experience.
Yeah, thanks for
Welcome.
having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry, with my co-host, Io.
It's me.
Io's here, of course. Can't do this without him.
So Jennifer, just for the audience, just tell us who you are, what you do, where you are in life right now.
I am currently working as a benefit processor. So I process either refunds or rollovers for teachers. Yeah, I've worked there for 3 years now. And before that, I worked as a pharmacy technician for about 11 years. So I'm married. I've got one little boy. He's about to be 9. Yeah, I've lived in the Austin area for most of my life, although I moved a lot when I was a kid and some other points. So, yeah.
That's interesting. I was a farm tech too at one point.
Oh, you were?
I was, moving the pills and counting them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I relate to you.
What store did you work at?
I was at Walgreens.
Oh, I heard that's like really bad.
They don't let us sit down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we just stood the whole time.
Well, we couldn't sit either.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one store I worked at where you could sit, but yeah, and we did have the pill counters.
Oh yeah. Okay. So
So you can just dump the bottle into the
Yeah.
machine and it can't, if you pour slow enough, you can.
yeah.
Anyways, but
Huh.
yeah, it was good at the beginning, and then it seemed like that just came to an end. And so, I had to move on, but, yeah, it was
That's
good.
great. Felt a little left out there. I didn't have that job. So okay.
You're not missing much. I promise.
Yeah.
Jennifer, could you share with us a little bit about your early testimony, your experience of first coming to know the Lord, how that was, and who played a key role in that, and how you came to know the Lord?
Yeah. My parents were both Christians. They met in church when they were 13 and 14. And eventually they got married. And my mom was a really serious Christian. And my dad was a serious Christian too, but ended up just struggling, a lot through his adult life, just with his circumstances. And so, but I remember, I was going to say, when I was born, I had dislocated hips.
Oh wow.
And at that time, doctors thought that if they put you in this special kind of cast, that would fix the dislocated hips. And so that's what they did. This is in the late 70s.
Mhm.
Okay. But they didn't know at the time that when, if you did this to a baby and put them in a wishbone cast, that it would mess up their gait for the rest of their life. And so as a result, my gait, my hips were fixed, but my femurs kind of grew inward. And so my tibia and fibia grew outward. And so my feet point inward.
Nice.
And so anyways, I guess, I just bring that up because it ended up really shaping me just because I would get made fun of, for that particular thing. And anyways, I know that, that was hard on my mom, but I know that she was just trying to stay open to the Lord and, give everything to the Lord along the way. And so, she would share with my brother and I have a brother that's 2 years younger. And she would, share about the Lord and that sort of thing. And I guess when I was about 4, I remember praying near this little lamp and asking the Lord in a really simple way to come and live in my heart. And yeah, so I mean, I just remember it was anyways, there was some kind of pursuit of the Lord, through my mom from, as long as I can remember, just a really long time. But I think the Lord really became real to me when I went to this church camp
Okay.
when I was going into 7th grade. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I just kind of was a really excited kid about, they would say, "Does anybody want to pray?" And so I would always just raise my hand. I want to pray. Or will anybody help with such and such? And, I just raised my hand, like just kind of too eager, you know? And I kind of didn't get like that none of the other kids were like that. So I think I kind of isolated myself because it was like, it was just always wanting to participate and, always wanted to, I don't know. I guess that was my first real like encounter with the Lord, where the Lord became real to me and the Bible was real to me and what was shared was really real to me. And so I didn't really have really any good friends.
Hmm.
Maybe one. But the Lord was still really real to me. But at that time, there were some things that started to happen. So that's the summer going into seventh grade. And in a nutshell, by the time that ninth grade was ending, I did not want anything to do with the Lord anymore.
Wow.
Why
I mean,
is
there were some things had happened. So I was living in South Austin and I was able to go to these church meetings that had other people my age. And then my dad decided that the school district was not good enough and we had to move to Round Rock. And so I was really angry about that because I knew that I wouldn't be able to go to those church meetings anymore. Not often, And then, there were some things that maybe got said to me. And, I don't know if you guys were like this, but I mean, as a 13 and 14-year-old, it's just really sensitive, And so sometimes people can say something, adults can say something and really not intend to hurt you or any kind of thing like that, but then they just offend you. And so a couple things happened like that, with some people that were in the church. And then, some sins came in, nobody to really shepherd me closely. And then I just was like, I'm done. I'm not not doing this anymore. So I guess my experience was like not like I kind of floated away from the Lord because I think a lot of people they just kind of they have other goals or whatever. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. And somewhere along the way, somebody had shared those verses from Revelation about maybe the Lord speaking to the church in Laodicea about, I would rather have you hot or cold, but not lukewarm.
Yeah.
And so as a 14-year-old, I was like, I'm going cold.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
I
going
don't
cold.
know. I guess I'm just kind of, I don't know. Maybe that's just kind of a little extreme for somebody that's 14 to
14,
kind of,
yeah.
feel like that. But that's just where I was at. And so, so I just decided that I just didn't want anything to do with the Lord. So,
It's very real though. Like you're just
I
being
mean,
real with the
I
Lord.
don't know. I guess I realized, I had been made fun of probably starting my earliest memories, probably second grade for the way that I walked, and then I became this, well, I was overweight at that time, but I just became more and more overweight moving into middle school and middle school boys. I mean, I know you
Oh,
guys are
it's not.
guys, but they were merciless to me, especially in eighth grade. I mean, I remember one time they all decided these boys in my class, in my AP history class, they decided that they would wait until I came out of the classroom, and there was probably at least 7 or 8 of them, and they decided that they would all make fun of the way that I walked all the way down this super long hall, like, in front of me, and, it was just such a cruel thing to do
Yeah.
to somebody that couldn't help the way they walked.
Mhm.
And,
Terrible.
so but those kind of things, it just kind of made me desperate to be accepted. And so when I had this turn away from the Lord, my goal was like, I have to have friends. I will do whatever it takes to have friends, And but still I wasn't really as accepted as I wanted to be. I was still overweight in high school, still couldn't change the way I walked. My family didn't have much money to like buy really fashionable clothes or anything like that. And so, so yeah, it was hard, but slowly I gained a group of friends. this group of, girls, middle, upper class girls that were, they were nice. And really they were, I mean, pretty good girls, And so anyways, I felt like that really made me happy that I had some really good friends by the time I graduated from high school. So
That's amazing.
when I graduated from high school, I got automatically accepted to UT Austin. But I decided to go to ACC, the community college here, because I forgot to register for the dorm.
Mm.
And I felt like from, watching movies that you're not going to get the real college experience if you're not in the dorm, So I was like, well, I might as well save money and just go to ACC. So I went to ACC, not pursuing the Lord, didn't want anything to do with the Lord. And then eventually it was time to transfer to UT. And my mom, she's like, oh, do you want to live with some other Christians? And I was like, no, of course I don't,
You at the time you were still feeling the way you felt in ninth grade, like you don't want.
Yes.
You were still there.
And I think like as time went on, I was just, well, I was angry.
Yeah.
And as
Sure.
years went on, I just kind of got more and more angry. So just this angry, like young woman, and I
Yeah.
did not want to
Happens.
live with other Christians or anything like that, And so, and then my mom, she would say, well, why don't you pray about, talk to the Lord, tell the Lord how you feel. And I was like, no, I'm not, I was not praying in any sort of way. I just didn't want the Lord at all, So, I ended up, going to UT, and then, I guess, in the background, I was having a lot of fun with my friends.
Oh.
Just kind of partying and, going out and trying to live it up. And I don't know, I just felt like, this is what everybody does and this is what I want to do.
Mhm.
And so I was still overweight at that time. And then I ended up trying to exercise to lose weight. And I lost 40 pounds.
Wow.
And I thought, my whole life will be changed if only I can lose weight, And so I lost the weight. And then I just thought, the attention that I wanted, I would get. And that really didn't happen, And in the back of my mind, even though I was so mad at the Lord, I felt like the Lord was somehow like preserving me by letting me be kind of fat through high school, And that made me mad, because I didn't want to be preserved. Like I just wanted to be like normal and accepted, And so I lost this weight and I thought this is going to be like the meaning of
Yeah.
everything, I'm going to
Yeah.
have what I want. And then it didn't do that. And I remember, I don't know, I guess I was downtown with my friends and I don't know what came over me, but I looked at this woman and that she was downtown and she was maybe like 30 or something. And I thought, she is so old. What is she doing down here? This is pathetic, And of course, I'm so much older than that now. But I just remember thinking like, why is she down here? And then there's this thought came to me like, well, where do you see yourself when you're 30? And I was like, oh, I guess I see myself waking up early in the morning to read my Bible and spend time with the Lord.
Whoa.
And I was like,
Come from.
that, because that's what my mom did. My mom always did that. When
Wow.
and I don't know if my brother feels this way, but that is just like how I remember my mom was like every time we woke up, she always woke up before us and she was always having time alone with the Lord.
That's
And so it was
amazing.
such a bizarre thing for me to think that way, like, because I'm maybe 21 thinking this. And so then the thought came, well, if that's where you see yourself, then when are you going to start transitioning to that? And so I just said, well, I guess when I'm ready to stop having fun, because pursuing the Lord is not fun. And, having anything to do with the Lord is not fun at all, so when I'm ready to stop having fun. And then I don't know how much longer it was before, I was in this bar with my friends. And then one of my friends says to me, what's wrong with you? Why are you not having fun? And I was just like, what? I was like, I'm having fun. She's like, no, you're not. You're not having fun. And I just felt like it was like the Lord was like finding me there,
Mhm.
you
Wow.
know? And I was like, I'm having fun. I'm having fun. But I knew, like I knew I was not having fun, you know? And so, anyways, also during that time, like this, I would be on the UT campus and there was a couple different experiences I had. And I guess this is kind of like, you know, maybe some people just have an incident where it's just like they
Mhm.
just turn back to the Lord.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that. Like this is like a slow
Yeah.
series of
Feel.
events,
Yeah.
And so one of them was like, there was this guy in my Spanish class, and I don't think he liked me as more than a friend, but we walked, down the drag, the main street that goes through campus, and we were going to go have lunch together. And I mean, I didn't know who this guy was, but apparently he loved the Lord, and he started talking about the Lord, and he would not stop talking about the Lord. Like he just talked about the Lord all the way down to this restaurant that we walked to. He talked about the Lord during lunch, talked about him all the way back down. And then we wind up in like this grassy area of the campus. And finally, I was just like, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I was like, will you stop talking about the Lord? Like, I don't want to hear it.
Mm.
And, for him, I mean, he probably was like, wow, like, I mean, talk about just kind of like throwing cold water on him,
Mhm.
But I mean, all of that was just like kind of burrowing into me. And he had no idea because my reaction was so negative. And then I had this other incident where I was like feeding squirrels. I don't know why. I just love the squirrels on campus. It's just like one of these things I love to do, which
Mm.
is this weird thing.
A lot of squirrels at UT.
And
Tons.
they're mean now. I
Oh.
think the feeding like made them think that they're entitled to your food. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, somebody told me like
go walk
one of the
around UT.
main reasons people go to the I don't know, the student services center to the little doctor is for squirrel bites. I didn't care. So I'm feeding this squirrel, and somebody comes up to me and basically tries to tell me about the Lord. And I was just really mean. I was like, I don't want to talk to you. And then I guess she had this thought, like, maybe we could get together, and I was like, no, like, I don't see why I would give you my phone number. I don't want to spend any time with you, and just very mean.
Mhm.
Okay. And I did not know who this woman was. Okay. But come to find out, she had been praying for me. She didn't know who I was either. She had been praying for me with this other sister
Hmm.
that had been praying for me for years.
Oh.
This other sister that I had been really mean to, and I had made her cry. Not to mention this other one that I had made cry too. So I just really had this really mean streak about me, I guess. And
How did
so,
they know you, those two sisters?
so one of them, she was connected to me when I was a 7th and 8th grader.
Got it.
Okay.
At church.
And so she tells this other one that she just kind of was, prayer companions with about this girl that she just had some feeling for. And so they were praying, and she just didn't know. She didn't know who this girl was. And then come to find out, she ends up trying to speak to me,
Mm.
And so I had this very negative reaction, and she didn't know. She didn't know like this. Actually, I don't even know if she got my name. I don't know if she realized, and we didn't realize till years later that, oh, this is a person that I've been praying for, and I didn't know who it was,
Wow.
And so, anyways, my point in saying that
God's
is,
operating,
yeah,
behind the
and you
scenes.
just, you just don't know who you're speaking to.
Yeah.
If you speak to somebody about the Lord, like it might be a very negative reaction, but the Lord could be operating for years
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
background,
Right.
And so, anyways, so I remember one night after I got back from probably being at some bar or something, and at that time, I didn't know if God existed anymore. And so, and I genuinely prayed to receive the Lord, but I just, it had this strong turn away. And so I remember telling the Lord late one night, God, if there is a God, because I don't know if you exist anymore, but if you do exist, I just want you to know that I want nothing to do with you. And if you want anything to do with me, you're going to have to do everything because I'm not going to cooperate at all. I mean,
Wow.
I don't
Another
know.
real prayer.
I mean, it's just like,
Genuine.
yeah. And my mom she had told me, she said, even just tell the Lord you hate him, tell the Lord anything.
Mm.
And I was like, no, I'm not going to tell the Lord anything like that. But anyways, all these series of these little things,
Mm.
and I feel like that was something the Lord really used, this very rebellious, angry prayer, but it was still being honest with him about where I was at,
Mhm.
And so then somehow after that, um, I don't know what happened. Probably there was a series of, small disappointments with my friend group, people that I had met or whatever.
Mhm.
And then one day, I was on the campus and somebody gave me like this little flyer for this little dinner that was going to happen with this Christian group. And honestly, the only reason why I was interested was because this guy was cute. And so, and I don't even know why. Like, why would I even feel like that? Because in my mind, I was like, well, I just know how these things go and, person's not going to be interested in me. But anyway, somehow I just thought, oh, he's just really cute. And so I'm just going to go,
Mhm.
And so I go to this thing, with a really bad attitude. I'm not open to really anything, much of anything. But this woman came up to me that actually I had known when I was a seventh grader. And and so I ended up talking to her
Mm.
during this kind of dinner thing. It was just this welcoming thing they had. And then and I did not listen to their spiel about this club or whatever. I was complaining about who the Lord was outside with this woman,
Mm.
for almost the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And then I went in at the very end and I looked at all these college students, and I just had this deep feeling, like looking at them and they were all singing this song. I just had this deep feeling like I want nothing to do with these people at all. Isn't that terrible? I want nothing to do with them because I just felt like these people want nothing but the Lord. Like the Lord is at the top of their list.
Yeah.
And for me, I just felt like the Lord is not even on my list.
Hmm.
Like I don't want anything to do with these people,
Wow.
But somehow I just felt like I wanted to get together with this woman that had just listened to me complain. And so I started getting together with this Christian sister, okay, with all my concepts or whatever. And so we would get together, and I have no idea. Like, I don't know if we started out with 3 times a week, but at some point it turned into 3 times a week.
Wow.
I'm getting together with her, complaining. Okay. And I would try to shock her with what I was doing on the weekends, and because I was just kind of like trying to see, like, bait her.
How
Like,
long
let's
she
see.
will stick around.
Yeah, is she gonna correct me?
Yeah.
Is she gonna just say something like, you really shouldn't be doing that. This is very dangerous behavior, what you're doing. And, but she never corrected me. Okay. And
Oh.
even my friends, they saw me getting together with her. And, she wasn't like, she was older. I'm a college student, There's like not really anything. And my friends would be like, why are you getting together with that lady? And I was like, I don't know. Just leave me alone. Like, I don't know, And so then
Wow.
slowly one day it just dawned on me, she had not corrected me. I could not believe this. And then one day I finally realized she loves me.
Wow.
And I was like, why does she love me? And I was like, this is the Lord. The Lord loves me.
Wow.
And there was just some melting, my heart was just melting from just interacting with this person that would not correct me,
Yeah. Wow.
And so I decided that I was going to start going back to church. And I was going to arrive late. I was going to leave early. I was not going to smile at anybody. I was not going to say hi to anybody. And I just felt like, during that period when I was like a seventh, eighth, and ninth grader, it just kind of turned into a little bit of performance for me, And so I decided if I'm going to go back to church, I am not going to perform in any sort of way. If anything's going to change about me, it's going to have to be real because I'm not going to put on any kind of air. Okay. I'm going to go with my bad attitude, So that's what I decided to do. And then, and even I remember, like, I decided, even I'm going to, like, my friends convinced me, come out with us. Let's go to this bar, I was like, no, no, I'm going to church tomorrow.
Mm.
And then they're like, you can still come out with us. And they convinced me, okay, yeah, I'll, you can, they convinced me, you can still go to church tomorrow.
Hmm.
So I go out and, somehow I just really had not met, you know, who I thought, these handsome men would be if I had just lost weight. I hadn't met anybody until that night. That night, I ended up
Nice.
meeting somebody that I just can't believe is pretty handsome and is kind of interested in me. And I even told him, I'm going to church tomorrow. And, I don't know. So I just end up going to church and that just turned into nothing. And slowly over time, I guess I stopped coming early. I would
Mm.
arrive on time and maybe stay a little bit after. And then I had heard about these home groups
Mm.
that people would have. And I remembered this one family from when I was really young. And I heard that they had a home group, but nobody had ever personally invited me to like these home groups.
Mhm.
But they did. One day they did. And so I was like, okay, maybe I might go. And then I was like, well, I wonder if they're going to correct me, with the way I'm dressing and how much makeup I have on.
Mhm.
And then I got there and they never corrected me. They basically, having time with this family, they changed my life. They changed the trajectory of my life. And they didn't really do it in a dramatic way, just their everyday human living. And I remember my parents had this pretty rough marriage. And so I had a pretty negative outlook on marriage
Mm.
and men in general. And then through spending some time with the family and with the husband, and the wife, I just kind of watched their interaction, and I was like, it just dawned on me, like, oh, like this is what a proper marriage can look like.
Mm.
Like seeing the love between them,
Yeah.
and like I feel like there was some healing that happened there with like my
Mm.
concepts about,
That's good.
and he didn't have to say anything. It's just like their humanity, just being around them. I was like, oh, like even there was this one little incident where the sister came home from, I don't know, being at the grocery store. Maybe she spent too much money on this or that. And so I was thinking when she said this in front of the family, I thought, okay, maybe this is going to be World War III. Like it would be like at my house. And then I saw how this brother reacted to her. And he was like, it's okay. You know, um, maybe don't do that again, but we'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. And I was just shocked, like that people could be like this and live like this. Anyways, so it was this slow, change that really melted my heart toward the Lord. All these experiences and anyways, and changed what I wanted to do even. And so eventually I graduated and surprisingly, even though I had planned on going to grad school and I had all these plans, I just fell in love with the Lord,
Wow.
deeply
Amen.
in love with the Lord, you
Mm.
know, um, just so in love with the Lord. I felt like I was just swimming in love,
Mm.
and so I just felt like all I want to do is just find out more about who the Lord is. And so I ended up going to this Bible school.
Wow. God is amazing.
Yeah.
This- yeah, like, there's a lot to unpack there about what you
Yeah.
shared, but how the Lord, I just really appreciated your genuine prayers, even in ninth grade, all the way to to college,
Yeah.
and how the Lord used all of that even to just, I know now you're a person who's very, burdened and has a lot hard for others, for the
Mhm.
gospel.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyways, how do you think, we all go through winters with the Lord, and I feel like maybe you went through a long, winter, but I think these are normal and part of the Christian life, right? But God can use them, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you think, could you share for those who maybe are going through winters with the Lord about how in his sovereignty God can use that time to later? Because I feel like maybe your heart now for people, right? You really have a, I know we talked earlier about your feeling to preach the gospel, and then you always have a desire to preach the gospel. Is that
Yeah.
kind of come from You think
think
you would
so.
be here if you didn't have those years, you know?
No. And I think, those years as a junior higher and early high school, I just was so confident. Had so much confidence in myself, and I would see the reaction of other believers and they were just excited of like, you know, excited with how I would react, and I wanted to pray and I wanted to help and all these kind of things. And so I had this kind of self-assured kind of part of me,
Mm.
but then after, feeling like I'm never turning back to the Lord, I'm never having anything to do with God ever again, you know? And then after coming back to the Lord, then you just feel like I can't trust myself.
Mm.
Like I cannot trust myself at all. My feelings, my thoughts, all of my, even I had other experiences in college that was just like, I don't even know myself, you know? And so it was a very humbling experience, also having this turn back and having, people, it's really hard to start meeting kind of with a Christian group as somebody that is a Christian and maybe you've been away for a long time with some of the questions, like maybe people that knew you before, like, where you been?
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't seen you in forever, or, and they don't mean it in a mean way necessarily, but you can easily take it like that.
Sure.
So it's just this very humbling experience to feel like, no, I don't know myself. And I can't be so sure of anything except that the Lord loves me. That's all, but as far as any decisions or anything like that, it just was like this deep experience of kind of all the self-confidence kind of being wiped out of the way,
Mhm.
And then also having this realization like you never know who you're speaking to. And it doesn't matter what kind of, reaction
Mm.
somebody might have to you because you just don't know what the Lord's been doing.
Mm.
And you don't know, there's that example of like with the gospel, it's like chopping down a tree,
Mm-hmm.
And you can't chop down a tree with one blow. It takes many, many, many blows to, with the axe to chop down a tree. And so you don't know if you're the first blow or you might be the last blow and then you see the tree fall over.
Mhm.
So you just don't know with people,
Yeah.
You don't know really where they're at. But anyways, after I went to that Bible school, I did Christian outreach. I had a teaching degree,
Mm-hmm.
but at that time, I just felt like I just want to serve the Lord. I had this experience. I didn't have it in college, but I had it at that Bible school where I approached somebody with, my partner, my gospel partner, the person assigned to me to go speak to people about the Lord. And this person that we approached prayed with us to receive the Lord. And when they did that, I had this feeling like it wasn't like my life flashed before my eyes, but it was like I just have the deepest feeling that this is my destiny.
Mm.
Like this is why I was created, was to like help somebody come to know the Lord.
Yeah.
They say like the happiest day of a Christian's life is when you pray to receive the Lord, but the second happiest day is when you help somebody else pray to receive the Lord.
Mhm.
And
Amen.
I just felt like this is incredible. It was just incredible. So
Mhm.
I ended up doing this outreach and I had some really great experiences with that. But I did that for 4.5 years. And then I felt like that had kind of come to an end. And so it was time to, I guess, move into something else. I guess it was a little burnt out at that point, but not like I didn't want anything to do with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I needed some other kind of thing to happen. So,
I wanted, and this might throw you off track, but I wanted to go back to junior high around that time. I feel like you experienced a lot of bullying.
mhm,
There was some insecurity that may have come up from how you felt about your body
mhm,
and maybe not having as many friends as you'd like.
mhm,
And I feel like um, And it sounded like in your testimony that developed a hardness in your heart towards the Lord.
Oh, yes.
And I feel like there's a lot of kids in our generation that are going through a similar experience where they don't feel comfortable in their own body. They feel like just not normal. And the world is just giving them so many other identities that they can cling to and find shelter in.
Mm-hmm.
But I was wondering in retrospect, um, what should somebody in that situation do? Even in to the Lord, how do they involve the Lord in that? Because often, because I dealt with self-esteem issues, we feel like I don't know what the Lord is going to do for me in that area. Maybe I should keep him out of that. But it does seem a bit dangerous because it can harden your heart towards the Lord. So I don't know if you have anything to say in that realm, but I just wanted to just pick your brain and even just hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was just a period of my life that, um, I mean, in seventh grade, I was enjoying the Lord. And so even though I didn't have many friends at school, it was okay. But in eighth grade, things just took this turn where, these people around me were extraordinarily mean. They were really, really mean. And I would try to tell the Lord, but I just wonder maybe if I had had a companion. I did have this one companion, but I didn't have really close contact with her, and she was popular too. Like she played basketball and she was thin and she was really pretty. I don't know why she was friends with me, but but yeah, I do wonder maybe that could have helped.
Mm.
Um, the isolation,
Mm-hmm.
and then somehow just shutting the Lord out, the Lord was despised and forsaken of men.
Mm.
Isaiah
Yeah.
Isaiah 53, it says, He has no attracting form,
Right.
Yeah.
nor majesty that we should look upon
Yeah.
him,
That's right.
nor beautiful appearance that we should desire him.
Mhm.
He was despised, and we did not esteem him. And in 52, the chapter before, it said his face was marred,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like, and some translations say disfigured.
Mm.
you know you can know all those things, but I feel like without having someone, if it's a family member or hopefully somebody, another believer that you can really open all these things to,
Mhm.
without having a human, another human being
Mhm.
to kind of open all of these things to, it's so difficult.
Mhm.
I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, did you, and maybe it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
I really don't know. And actually, come to think about it, I mean, I don't know if I've heard other people your age talk about being bullied and still staying close to the Lord through all that. I don't know. It's a very difficult thing.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think?
You know, I I got the privilege to be that person for my younger brother,
Oh, that's great.
and I love how you mentioned that it's like you need a human touch,
Yeah.
like a person to talk to. And me and my younger brother, we talk about everything.
Mm.
And when I was growing up, I didn't really have an outlet, but I was his outlet, and I could also tell him about the experiences I went through. And I felt like it was this mutual taking care of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's, often like when we fellowship, we think we have to go like read the Bible, get into doctrine.
Right.
But to talk to somebody about like, I'm not pursued by the opposite sex,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not
Mhm.
popular,
Right.
or I walk funny, I have funny posture,
Right.
Yeah.
or I don't feel comfortable in my body. Like that's so valuable, and that can be done in the Lord.
Right.
Like we would pray after we just talked about our feelings, and I don't know. I just feel like in this generation, the enemy he's just taking advantage of the the sensitive and fragile emotional state of preteens
Mm.
and teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
the Lord's mercy that you're here with us because he was still chipping the wood of your
Right.
heart through
Right.
young adulthood. But so many of us are lost
Yeah.
Yeah.
because anyway, I think
Right.
all the preteens and teenagers around us, like, I think we can just be available to hear them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you go first. I've
And the
been
people
talking a lot.
most likely to hear them are people that have gone through these experiences, right? When we go through
Hmm.
these kind of experiences where our self-confidence is touched and we
Yeah.
have either maybe something that God arranged for us to fail or something, that's what produces something that we have a listening ear, we can really relate, right? I think
Yeah.
touched about God touching our self-confidence. I feel like God needs that so that we can be those who can really shepherd others, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I heard the statistic one time that I guess it was some kind of study they did about Christians in general and kids that grow up kind of in the church and the ones that stay, they don't turn away from the Lord once they
yeah.
become adults. They kind of stay in the church, right? And they said the factor that kept them was if they were related to 5 adults other than their parents
Mm.
that they could kind of open to about what they're going through.
Yeah.
And I just felt like that's really striking because your parents, you know, you can open to them. And my mom, she was so unconditionally loving. I mean, we could tell her anything. And I never felt judged by her at all. But I think that there is something to having some other adults in your life, that are um caring about you and will listen to some of these practical things that you're struggling with. And even to know that, you know, there's somebody else that's praying for you in the background, some other adults that are maybe, fighting for you in their prayer, that's so meaningful.
Mhm.
So, even with my son, my husband and I have this hope that we could put ourselves like right now we live, in an area that is not around so many other Christians that we're close to, but our hope is to move and live in an area where there's other adults that our son can be related to,
Mm-hmm.
that as he goes through junior high and high school, he could have some other adults that care about him
Yeah, that's
and that
really
he can,
important.
open to,
Yeah. I've really enjoyed listening to your testimony because you just realize that what makes us useful to the Lord is the Lord, like once we really find the Lord, outside of um, there's so many things that get in the way of just being filled with the Lord, it's things that we struggle with or our self-confidence but you realize the Lord can use anybody, no matter what size, what cut, we're just vessels, right?
right.
And once the Lord gets in there and there's a way for him to get in there more, then we can be just as useful as anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But these struggles are such a key part of the Lord getting in there,
Mm-hmm.
and filling our vessel more so that we could
Right.
be more useful.
Right.
But it seems like we have a breakthrough and then there's another thing that we like bring
Right.
in to like, either we struggle or like something about ourselves or maybe
Right.
has there been I just enjoy that you kind of dealt with these things and the Lord has had a way to fill you and make you
Mhm.
more useful.
Yeah,
And how about as you continuing your life after college? You said I know you've moved a lot, right?
I did
And
move a
then
lot, yeah.
eventually you got married. How
Right.
about is there another experience in that stage of your life that was a struggle, but then you got through it and the Lord was able to use you more or
Yeah, so, um,
whether
I
that's
was doing that Christian outreach,
yeah.
and then I ended up moving to Tallahassee, and I did Christian outreach there for a year. And those were really precious times because the majority of the people that you end up, interacting with, at least in my experience, are people that they're seeking Christian fellowship, their heart is soft, at least toward God, in some sort of way, right? They sign up at a Christian table, that sort of thing. Um, but I feel like my really special experiences of the gospel were after I was a working person, when I was
Mm,
not doing Christian outreach.
mhm.
So when I moved back from Tallahassee, I had to move back in with my parents. And that's where I ended up working as a pharmacy technician. I had done that before. I was just looking for a part-time job.
Mhm.
I didn't know what I was going to do next. I didn't know if I needed to go into teaching and use my degree, or what was going to happen. And so I applied for this job as a pharmacy technician. It was part-time, and then they turned it into a full-time offer. And, the economy was terrible at that time. And I was just like, man, I don't know if I want to do this full time, and I'm in a small town, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to do this, but I ended up taking it. And in College Station, I mean, this is a very conservative area, like extremely conservative. Um, I mean, I would say most people either are Christians or they profess to be Christians or, something like that. But in this pharmacy, I don't think there were any Christians at all.
In College Station.
And at this pharmacy in College Station that I was put in. Now maybe there was one, nominal Christian or something, but and I had this other work experience in between. Well, actually, I just remembered something else. Before I moved to Tallahassee, I had this experience where I signed up to work for the census. And it's just kind of like this motley crew of census people from all different kind of backgrounds, okay? And I think my boss, anyways, he had odd jobs all over the place. There was one girl there that had her law degree, somebody else that was going to go work for the Peace Corps, you know. And so, I love the Lord, and the Lord has put this love in me for people. Okay. And I had not been around, people that didn't want anything to do with the Lord really in any kind of way like that in quite some time. Right. And so I'm sitting at this picnic table with them, and they are trying to convince me that based on the way that we practice to approach doors, okay, to ask people if they would fill out this census form, and we had reenacted how this was going to go in this classroom, okay, before we had gone out to do this, that these three people, okay, they were trying to convince me that I needed to go into community theater, okay, and I was just thinking, I'm not going into community theater. Like, there's no way I'm going to do this. And then they kept going on and on about how good I would be if I would just do this, And I'm just thinking, like, they've got me all wrong. Like, that is just not, I mean, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but maybe I am a little dramatic, but I'm not, this is not why I'm here. And then I just keep feeling like they're pushing me and pushing me. So finally, that my boss, he's telling me about his experience. Maybe he had done a little community theater. And so finally they just say, now we think you need to do this. So what reason do you have for not doing community theater? And I just felt compelled. I just told them, because that's not why I'm living on the earth.
Oh.
And they were all like, what? And then I said, well, I'm a Christian. And so I started to describe, like, I believe that God made man for a purpose.
Yeah.
And then my boss, he started to interrupt me. And I said, I never interrupted you when you were telling me about your life and why the decisions you made with your life. I let you speak, and I never once interrupted you. Can you please let me, say this to you without interrupting? And so I just in a real short way, I just spoke about the gospel, and none of them prayed with me, but I had been praying for them, especially the Peace Corps one and the law, the girl that had her law degree. And I had been praying and praying for them. And so, anyway, somehow, I didn't want to preach the gospel at that time, but I ended up just kind of sharing something with them. And, I don't know what happened. Hopefully the Lord will answer my prayer, maybe, and maybe I'll never know. But anyways, so fast forward to being in this pharmacy, after I get back from Tallahassee, and I don't think any of these people are believers, but there's just something in me that just, I don't know. I just love people. I don't know. And so I started working with this one college student, and, I don't know if you've had this experience, but, when you're working with people, you spend the majority of your time, I mean, working full time, you're spending the majority of your time with these people. And inevitably, you've got some downtime. And so you end up finding out about their life, So I ended up finding out about this college student, in his life. And, I guess I had had a pretty sheltered life because I did not know that, I mean, I guess logically I knew that people would have maybe a bad home life, but like I didn't know practically like what that would look like and maybe some of the things that, you know, your parents might say or your parents might do or not take care of you,
Mhm.
or neglect you, for some like important events in your life.
Mhm.
And I just remember, and he told me this. So this kid, this college kid, he told me he was an atheist. And I didn't care. It's like you can say whatever you want about yourself that you're an atheist because God has put eternity in man's heart.
Mhm.
And so I know that it doesn't matter, right? And then he told me kind of why. And he had had some really negative experiences and had experienced some really dramatic hypocrisy, from some people, related to the church and even from his mom. And so I didn't blame him. It's just like, I might be an atheist too if I'd gone through that. And of course I'd had this experience where I questioned if God existed.
Mhm.
So so anyways, he tells me this and I just feel like, there's this verse in Matthew when the Lord is looking out at the crowds. And he said he was filled with compassion for them because they were like sheep, not having a shepherd.
Mhm.
And so I just told the Lord, Lord, who's going to take care of this kid? Like, who's going to shepherd him? Who's going to pray for him? And so I would just mention his name, you know? And these were not like strong prayers. This was just driving home. My drive home was 2 minutes. And I would just mention his name to the Lord. Just just so bothered about this kid and also bothered because I liked him. He's really funny. He'd play these practical jokes on me. And he was just, I don't know. He's just like this kid that I ended up like caring about, but felt like, Lord, like, who's going to take care of him? And so I would go home and I tell my mom about him. And then, and she was a really good cook and she would have leftovers. And I would say, well, what if we take him to, this kid? Let's call him Mitchell. Okay. Okay. So I'd say, what if can I bring these leftovers to Mitchell? And so then I would take him to him and he loved my mom's cooking. It was because it was so good. And so then, she came up there and she met him. And I think she was praying for him
Mhm.
too. And so she would say, Mitchell, aren't you cold? It's cold outside. Do you have a jacket or a sweater? Why are you wearing a t-shirt? He's like, oh, I'll be fine. Well, she didn't feel like it was fine. So she started shopping for him. She would go to Kohl's and try to find, sweaters that she thought he would like.
Oh,
And
wow.
I don't think that his mom did things like this for him. Like, like she would go and just no questions asked. She would just go get him a sweater and then bring him food. And then anyways, and so I'm just praying for him. And I had it because I was in this situation where I was kind of burnt out. I had just told the Lord, Lord, I'm not going to speak to any of these people. Like, I'm not going to speak to these people about the Lord. So I'll pray, but I'm not going to speak to them. So just playing this game with myself. Like, I don't know who's going to speak to him, but I'm not going to do it. But I mean, I guess I can pray, but like, I'm not going to speak to them. Right. And so then, but I just felt like, oh, like this kid, like who is going to take care of him? This kid is not going to sign up at a table.
Mhm.
He's an angry kid that says he's an atheist. He's not going to, while he's on the A&M campus, he's just going to, wander up to a Christian table and be like, I think I do want some Christian. He's not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, he's just not going to do that. Right. And I remembered this verse that was shared with me from Romans 10. Um, and it says, I was found by those who were not seeking me.
Yeah. Amen.
And I just realized, it is so sweet when the Lord, he shepherds these ones that are seeking him. But it's also so sweet when the Lord finds these ones that are not seeking him. they don't think that they have a need. They're not hungry, but the Lord finds them,
Yeah.
It's just, anyway, so I'm praying in the background and my mom is praying in the background. And then eventually, and he has a girlfriend and everything. And so I just decide, well, maybe they can start coming over to our house on Wednesdays. And my dad was working out of town but my mom, she's like, yeah, let's see if we can have them over on Wednesdays. So they start coming over for dinner. And, I guess Mitchell just can't resist because the food is so good. He's not going to turn down a dinner invitation. And so he starts coming over, and then we're nearing the end of the semester. And I just felt like, Lord, I don't want him to just think, wow, these are really nice people, because I want him to know you. And so I did not want to speak to him about the Lord, but I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go get a little gospel track and I'm going to sit down with him and his girlfriend and I'm just going to ask him. I said, I don't know if you want to maybe read this. Would you be open to read this with me? And it's about Jesus.
Mm.
And he said, yes, no hesitation.
Wow.
And I just felt like it was because of the care,
Mhm.
like, when I had done Christian outreach in the past, they had told us all life responds to care.
Yeah,
Mm.
right.
All life. There is no life, even a stray cat, anybody, all life responds to care.
Yes.
And so he was just responding to care. So we read through this and then we get to the part that I don't like in this gospel track because it says, will you pray? And so I don't want to ask him, will you pray? Because I don't want to be rejected. I hated being rejected, even though I had experienced a lot of rejection. I just didn't want to put him on the spot, But I say, Mitchell, would you want to pray this prayer? And he says, yes.
Hmm.
And so he prayed, he prayed with me. I don't think his girlfriend did, but he did. And it was just so awesome, that the Lord has this heart. The Lord has this heart for these people that don't have a heart for him.
Mhm.
They don't want him, they don't want anything to do with him.
Mhm.
But the Lord still has a heart for them, and sometimes, the Lord
Yeah.
the Lord does this he does it through us.
Yeah.
And we end up having a heart for people that maybe, they don't seem like they're good material, they don't seem like they're, I don't know, we just have all these concepts
Right.
about people, I mean, one time I was helping these little junior hires. We went out into a parking lot. We were trying to help them practice speak to people about the Lord. And one of the junior hires was like, what about that man over there? And it's like me and these two girls. And the man looked like he was like some biker guy, and he had tattoos and he's wearing a leather jacket and I'm thinking,
Maybe
he's
not.
scary.
Yeah.
Like, do we
Yeah.
really want to go up to this guy? But we go up to him and we're like, we would like to talk to you, and look up at him. We'd like to talk to you about Jesus. He's like, oh, no, it's too late for me.
Mm.
And, and I just felt like, no, it's not too late for you. I said, oh, no, it's not too late for you. And so we shared with him, about the Lord. And I don't remember if he prayed with us or not. I have a feeling that he did pray with us. But, the Lord just doesn't care.
Yeah.
The Lord doesn't care what people look like, and he doesn't care what their background is, and he doesn't care if they've been angry at him, for 60 years. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter,
Yeah.
you know? So, anyway, so I just had this series of experiences through these jobs that I have had where, I guess what was really special about a number of these different experiences is that I just decided I wasn't going to say anything and I was just going to pray. I was just going to pray for them. Lord, what about this person? Is there anybody in their life that is praying for them? Like, is there anybody that you can bring into their life to shepherd them? I mean, maybe I'm not the one. I would be happy to not be the one, let it be somebody else, but just praying and then the Lord slowly changing their circumstances so that somehow they would be open to me, uh, and even to approach me.
Mhm.
Like, Mitchell didn't approach me, but like there was one case of one pharmacist that I don't think she liked me. She was mean to me. I wasn't working fast enough, you know?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know. I just think she just didn't like me, right?
Yeah.
But then she ended up having this experience where her husband, she had 2 kids, one on the way. Her husband comes and says, "I don't love you. I don't love you. I've never loved you. And I don't want to be married to you anymore." And so she comes to work and she is understandably like distraught. And then she comes up to me, and I wasn't talking to people about the Lord, you know? She comes up to me and she's like, "What are you doing for lunch?" And I was like, thinking, "I don't want to have lunch with you. You're mean to me." Like, and I was like, "I don't know." She's like, "I want to have lunch with you." And so I was like, "Okay." So we go to lunch. And then it's like, she's like, "I don't know what you have, but whatever you have, like, I want it." And so I had brought a track with me and I was like, "I do not want to speak to this woman about the Lord, but I just felt like this is what she needs. She needs the Lord." And so I just told her in a short way about the Lord, and she just prayed with me on the spot. And there's just a number of different experiences like that where, even maybe I say a tiny thing about the Lord and they express no interest. They don't have any interest, but I just keep praying. And then slowly their circumstance changes. And then they're like, "I do want to read the Bible with you, you know? So I don't know.
Wow.
It's been really, really sweet
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
these experiences, like, to see that the Lord is not just after ones that are seeking, but he's
Amen.
after ones that are not seeking.
Yeah. That's right.
In the Old Testament, it says the Lord is the desire of all the nations,
That's right.
Mhm.
all man deep within. They think they desire something else, but they desire God.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Amen.
it's been an awesome
That's
experience.
awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jennifer, we want to touch on something that we hope you feel comfortable sharing about, and that's something you sprinkled already throughout your testimony, and that's the human desire to be with someone and eventually marriage.
Hmm.
And you are married, you've been married for uh, some time, and I just want to ask you about, marriage doesn't happen for all of us the way we think is going to happen, or sometimes not even with the person we thought it was going to be with, right? But it's just God's way to arrange things for us, right?
Yeah.
So in this matter of marriage, there's a lot of people today in society who are having a hard time with marriage. I know a lot
Hmm.
of people who are maybe not happening at the right time or the right way. Or is there anything from your experience, um, maybe before getting married, that you'd like to share to our listeners who could be helped, that are going through this period, this stage of life, wanting to be married?
I don't know what my concept is about people that are single and, you know, maybe that they should just be at peace. They're so in love with the Lord. They're just enjoying the Lord in this time when they don't have anybody at all. But that was just not my experience. I just had a terrible time. Um, I mean, I don't know. It was terrible in one sense, but then sprinkled throughout are these experiences of speaking to these people about the Lord.
Mm.
So it was like, I don't know. But anyways, so I got out of that Bible school, and I had never thought of myself of getting married until I was like maybe 27, you know. So I get out of this Bible school and I'm just thinking, probably it'll happen, you know. I mean, I don't know, but and I didn't feel like I was picky. I felt like I was open. I'm so open. I mean, I am just like open for anybody that is a believer, that is moderately attractive. Like, I'm just trying to be like so open. And then, a couple years go by, 27 comes and goes, and along the way, my friends are getting married.
Mhm.
And so I become friends with their husbands. So then I become I'll open to my friend and her husband, and then I'll just talk about like, I really want to get married and we'll pray about this and pray about that. And then those couples have children, you know, and then I just feel like it became harder and harder. Like, I don't know if you've seen Star Wars, but
Mhm.
there's this
Yeah.
scene in Star Wars where they're in that garbage compactor,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
And it's like
and it's
closing
like the
in.
walls are closing in, you know, and like the ceiling is coming down. And that's what I felt like. I just felt
Mm.
like, as the years and years went on, I was just like, I was just so it was so painful. I mean, even my husband asked me when I got pregnant, like, he was like, "Is this the hardest thing you've ever done in your whole life?" And I said, "No. Being single for all those years was the hardest thing, like, ever. It was just so desperately hard.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
I mean, like the other example is like Alice in Wonderland, you know, trying to go through like this. It's like the door is just becoming, smaller and smaller. And oh Lord, I mean, and I would see these sisters that were older than me, and I would tell the Lord, Lord, I'm never turning into that. I don't want to turn into that sister. And then, the years would go by, and like, I was like, yeah, I turned into this sister. And then even I would go to weddings. One person would come up to me. This happened one time. She comes up to me and they're cutting the cake. And she's like, is this hard for you? Because, she's younger than you and you used to, read the Bible with her and shepherd her, and she's getting married before you. This must be hard. And I'm
Wow.
just like, you know, I'm just trying to keep it together until I can run out into the parking lot and then just cry through the whole rest of the wedding, you know? I mean, there was another wedding that I went to, and that person had been a college student. This other wedding, that this was somebody I took care of as a high schooler, and she's getting married before me. And I was so upset that I was asking like the caterers if there was some other door that I could try to escape the venue because I was just crying. Like, it was so awful. And
Mm. There's tissues right next to you.
oh,
Yeah.
you know, it's just such a hard time, getting through that. And
Mhm.
but I remember, I think one thing that really helped me was opening like to these other couples
Mm.
and opening to these older believers, you know?
Mhm.
Um, I just feel like there's there's a supply. We're not individual believers. We're members of the body of Christ.
Yeah.
And there is a supply in these other members. And thankfully, like these
Amen.
ones that I would open to, eventually they really didn't have much to tell me. They didn't know what to say.
Mhm.
One by one, these brothers that I would have been open to, they marry somebody else, to the point where like there's nothing to say anymore, you know? They just don't know. But I felt like, they I knew that they were praying for me. And as I would open, this burden, I felt like, the word says, rejoice with those who rejoice and
Mm.
weep with those who weep.
Mhm.
And they would just grieve with me,
Mhm.
Mm.
like they just, you know, they were touched
Mhm.
with where I was at. And I knew they were praying for me. And sometimes I would just be doing so poorly that it was like, I don't know how I can like even make it through the rest of the day. And I remember like arriving at this couple's house, these older believers, and just complaining to them. And they didn't have, a solution for me. But we prayed together. Maybe I couldn't hardly pray. They prayed. And I left their house just thinking, I'm not leaving like full of joy,
Mhm.
full of like, oh, the Lord's going to do it. And I believe. And, I just feel
Yeah.
like, I am just barely like hanging on,
Mm.
I leave feeling I have just enough supply to get home.
Mhm.
I have just enough supply to make it through the rest of the day. Like, that's it, you know? So, but I guess I did feel, the best thing that you can do, at least I feel that I could do, was to just try to open to the other members of the body, for the supply.
Mm.
That's it. I feel like anytime I got isolated, it was just not good,
Yeah.
you know? And I
That's
would
good.
feel like, these human beings, like we talked about, that
Mhm.
you need in junior high.
Mhm.
During these other periods of your time, you need these human beings.
Mhm.
There's this song that has this one line, and it says, God eternal dwells among us,
Mm.
manifest in flesh to know.
Mm.
It's like, God is dwelling in these people,
Yeah.
and God is caring for me, in my just my desperation
Mhm.
through these other members of the body.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's just a very interesting thing. And as I was considering, my experience this week, I just felt like, I'm keeping the bar low like
Yeah.
for anybody that, might have a heart to preach the gospel to somebody. I mean, it's not like my coworkers were like, wow, she's so put together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
She's, she's overcoming. I mean, at one point, you know, my mom passed
Mhm.
away. 2 months later, I got demoted, you know,
Mhm.
and then I wind up working in a meat market. And I mean, and I sometimes would have to do grocery shopping, like this curbside thing, and I would just sob, grieving, that my mom had died
Mhm.
through the aisles.
Mm.
But this is during COVID, so I had a mask on, so people
Mm.
couldn't see how hard I was crying as I was walking through the aisles of the grocery
Mm.
store. But then the Lord gave me this person that I encountered, and somehow I was just like, what about Rhonda? And so I'm in this feeble, weak way asking the Lord about this woman who prays with me to ask the Lord to come and live in her heart after we read one chapter of the Bible, and then I move on to a different store.
Mm.
You
Mhm.
know, I realized with my mom, my dad would joke. He was like, we should have the Statue of Liberty in our front yard. Bring me, you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor,
Mm.
because she just had this heart for people and animals that, just didn't have anybody else. She just, and we would have the people we would have over for holidays were people that didn't have any place else to go. That's, those were the people that my mom and dad wanted to have over,
Mhm.
you know,
It's
and,
precious. Yeah.
and even, she had this heart for the gospel.
Yeah.
One time we met this woman that was living in this apartment complex up at the top of our street. And we had found out her situation. I had become friends with her because she had these dogs I liked. I don't know. And so we found out her situation, and it was really, really hard. And one day I came home from work and she told me, oh, she prayed with me to receive the Lord.
Mm.
I said, what happened? She said, I went to her door and I just started crying at her doorstep, and she opened the door, and I felt so desperate that she would pray with me. Like, she just had this heart.
Wow.
So I guess, some of my heart for people must be from her.
Yeah.
It's just so precious
Yeah.
that she just had this heart for people.
Yeah.
Somehow in the middle of feeling like we're an absolute mess,
Yeah.
the Lord can still use us.
Amen.
The Lord can
Yeah.
still somehow
Can use us.
reach man
Mhm.
in the middle of, somebody that is
Suffering.
suffering.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's just amazing. I don't think anybody I've worked with over the years, I don't think anybody would say that I have it all together. Even, when I was working with some other pharmacists that were kind of
Mm.
arrogant. I don't know if you encountered this, but sometimes these pharmacists. I mean, I know we've had a pharmacist on our show, and I am friends with that pharmacist, and he's never been condescending to me. But sometimes you encounter pharmacists that are condescending because you're a technician, you're not a pharmacist.
Yeah.
And I remember these verses. Can I read you these
Yeah.
verses? These verses just spoke to me. They still speak to me today. They're such a comfort. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1,
Oh, yeah.
it says, for consider your calling, brothers. This is verse 26, that there are not many wise according to flesh, not many powerful, not many well-born, but God has chosen the foolish things of the world that he might shame those who are wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world
Mm-hmm.
that he might shame the things that are strong.
Mm-hmm.
And the lowborn things of the world and the despised things God has chosen, things which are not, that he might bring to naught the things which are, so that no flesh may boast before God.
Mm-hmm.
And
Amazing verses.
I don't know.
Amazing verses, yeah.
Yeah, they're so, I just remember, kind of being belittled by maybe these pharmacists that I worked with,
Mm.
and just realizing like that is not God's view.
Mhm.
God has chosen the weak things of the world,
Mhm.
and, feeling weak in my circumstance and weak in what the Lord has arranged for me and not happy about how things are going.
Mm-hmm.
But God is still there,
Mhm.
God is still there, and God has chosen us even in the middle of our weakness,
Yeah.
Wow.
it's so amazing.
Yeah, man.
It's wonderful.
Yeah,
Even in the midst of our suffering, the Lord is still there.
yeah.
Yeah,
And the Lord can use our weakness in our caring for others.
right.
How do you feel like being aware of your weakness helped you in the way you care for others, in the way you shepherd others?
When you are aware of your weakness, you can't judge anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just lose all the ground you have to judge anybody because you just realize, like,
Yeah.
what a mess you are,
Mm.
that it's only the Lord's, mercy
Mm-hmm.
that you would even choose him,
Mm-hmm.
and so you just end up feeling like,
Yeah.
I mean, whatever kind of circumstance, whatever somebody might tell you, it's just like, I'm no better.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm worse, in my mind, or, maybe I'm worse. I mean, I can't keep my car clean, like I can't, remember to pack my lunch, or, all these things. Like, maybe I'm worse than you and you don't realize it, but like, I can't judge you. And, people feel it if you're judging them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, when the Lord allows us to be in these weak states, that weak state makes us low enough so that people might be open, because they feel like, wow, like this person is like, she does not have it all together,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just, I don't know. I heard somebody say one time, like, the Lord, he doesn't come to us at our level. He comes under
Under
us,
us.
to
Amen.
meet us where we're at,
Mm-hmm.
and so we hate it when the Lord, puts us in these situations when we're so weak, but it's when we're so weak that we're able to speak to people
Yeah.
and that they can accept us,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amen.
I'm rusty with preaching the gospel, just go through these times where you just don't
Yeah.
speak to people.
That's right.
And I had spoken to people about the Lord when I'd gotten my nails and done and pedicures done, but I hadn't done it in a long time. Well, I go to this nail salon and there's a college student there that's doing my pedicure. And so I was like, oh, do you, where do you go to school? He goes to Austin Community College. And I said, oh, I know some people that go there. And I said, I know some people that go to a Christian club there. And he's like, oh, I do too. And I was like, no, you don't. And and I said, I mean, I'm sure there's more than one Christian club there.
Mhm.
He's like, oh yeah, one of my good friends, he's the president of that club. And I'm thinking, no, he's not. We are not talking about the same group of people. And so I said, oh, well, I mean, what do you know about the club? He's like, I don't know. This friend of mine's been asking me, to come to these club meetings, and I just don't have the time. And I just haven't gone. I said, well, what's his name? So he tells me his name. And so I text these other college brothers that I know that go to this Bible study at this community college. And they're like, oh, yeah, we know that kid. He is the president. And I'm like, what? Like the Lord, and I don't even live in Austin. I live in a suburb. The Lord brought me to encounter this one young man so that I could pray for him, and I could encounter him maybe a few times. So maybe the Lord will have a way to bring this man to salvation.
Wow.
It's so awesome what the Lord will do. The Lord will go so far out of his way.
Yeah, that's right.
And I have to just share this one other time. This one time, I feel like I have had so many Jonah experiences where I'm like, I'm not going to speak to anybody about the Lord. Okay. But I got a dog when I was single, and I started going to dog parks, and I had spoken to somebody about the Lord, even though I didn't want to, because I guess somehow the topic had come up, and this woman had prayed with me to receive the Lord. And then I felt like I couldn't follow up, and I was just discouraged. And so I was just like, I'm not speaking to anybody about the Lord. And I told the Lord, I'm going to this dog park this morning, and I'm not talking to anybody. I'm going to sit in a position where nobody else can sit next to me. Nobody else is going to have any room. I'm going to sit where there's no room on a bench. There's no table. Nobody can come talk to me. And then I don't know how this happened. But I was near this bridge, and somebody came up behind me, and I'm trying to read this morning devotional. Okay. Somebody comes up behind me, and I could feel she's looking over my shoulder, and I'm like, what is this? Why is this woman looking over my shoulder? She's like, oh, what are you reading? And I'm like, I do not want to talk to you. I'm trying to be by myself. And then, she's like, what are you reading? I was like, oh, I'm reading the Bible. She's like, what is it about? And I'm like, oh, please. Anyways, and so I say a couple words to her. She's like, maybe we could talk easier if you would come over here to this area. And so I was like, okay, great. So I walk over, to this place where we can more easily talk. I talked to her a little bit about the Lord, and she says, I think you're an angel. And I was like, what? She said, I was about to kill myself this morning.
Wow.
And I told God, I'll give you one more chance for you to give me somebody, to speak something encouraging to me, to help me. Give me somebody to help me. I'll give you one more chance.
Wow.
And she said, so I came to this park near my house, and I met you. And I just felt like, wow, it's just,
Wow.
you just don't know what people are going through.
Absolutely.
I couldn't believe she told me that,
Yeah.
but it's I don't know if we're just a little open,
Yes.
even if you're not
Absolutely.
open,
Yeah.
but you're just somehow, I don't know,
Yeah.
just somehow a tiny bit open to the Lord. The Lord, he's ready
Yeah.
to use us,
That's right.
in a feeble, weak, uncooperative way,
Yeah.
he's ready.
That's
He's
right.
ready to do something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, especially these last two experiences. I feel like, when someone comes, we sit next to someone, or someone is next to us in a bus or whatever, we don't know or in a nail salon, we don't know what God has had to do to bring that person to us.
Right.
And if we realize who we are and what we have, it's not coincidence,
Right.
Thinking
It's
about
not.
the woman in John 4. So it's amazing that we could just cooperate by, even if we don't want to, saying something.
Right.
That's not a small thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. I hope our listeners are encouraged.
Man.
It's not just chance, We
Right.
have something, and God arranges for people to be with us. We need to be cooperate. Yeah.
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 So
Amen.
that's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The Lord can do so much if we just cooperate.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
open your mouth.
If we're just faithful to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Or at least pray for people. See
Or at
someone
least
and
just
pray.
pray.
Yeah. I like what you
Even
said.
just play this trick with yourself, oh, I'm not going to speak.
Yeah. Just
I'll
pray.
just
Yeah.
pray.
Yeah.
And then,
Good
and
first
then
step.
maybe the Lord will kind of, move you towards speaking.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. That's precious. Yeah. I think I don't know if you've ever shared this but thank you for being real with us and just
Yeah.
sharing your experience. I think it's out for the body to be supplied. So I don't know if you ever share with anyone like this, but we appreciate it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're almost at time,
Mhm.
but I don't know if you have a final question or you want to
We have
get to know Jennifer in a more human way. So does he have some rapid fire questions at the end?
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. But just before we start, I
Or
want
maybe you
to
have
I want to I want to thank you for being so honest and transparent. Seriously, because this feeling of being delayed in life and your life not looking the way you want it to, I feel like it's a taboo conversation in the church, and so often people say the wrong thing. Even in your testimony, a lot of people said the wrong thing.
And I've lived through that. You would think of all the people, that would never say the wrong thing to somebody single. I would not do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now I have said, like, I know, just not being careful, you know, I've said hurtful things to people that are single, not meaning, to say something insensitive, and I just realized we just need to give each other so much mercy and we need to forgive each other because I feel like it's rare that people are intending to say something hurtful. We really need to ask the Lord to give us a forgiving heart, even, as people say things that are insensitive,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because we're
Wow.
susceptible to do the same thing, even when we're on the other side,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. The Lord can be forgiveness in us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To just maintain the fellowship. It's so easy to just be disconnected by experiences like that, but the Lord can be in our speaking, but he can also be our forgiveness.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just realize, like, you know, you need so much forgiveness when
Mhm.
you're in this weak state,
Mhm.
just, being a mistake making machine. Like, that's just, I just feel like that's just what I do, and I'm just like, I can't throw a stone. Like, I am just,
Yeah.
even in Hebrews, it says the priests are encompassed in weakness,
Mm.
Yeah.
So
That's what we
we have this treasure in earthen vessels. That's it,
That's right.
Yeah.
Just earthen vessels.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
Amen.
So I do have some rapid fire
Okay.
questions. So you had some coffee during our episode. How do you like your coffee?
Oh,
These are low stakes,
it's true. It's true, right? If I'm trying to be good, then I'll just try to put the cream in and not put the sugar in.
Okay. Okay.
But I I am like a cheapskate. I do not go and get lattes. I mean, it's very rare. I mean, if I get a latte though, I want like just full on, give me the heavy whipping cream, maybe throw a flavor shot in there, but usually I'm just like a half and half,
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
some sugar kind of person. That's
Okay.
it.
You mentioned using gospel tracks. And they usually have a different title, different theme. What is your favorite gospel track to give someone, if you remember, specifically?
Um, the one that I have used the most is this one that says the mystery of human life.
Mm.
Um, because it just talks about the basics. But even as I was considering this week, my experience, I realized, Lord, I just had to confess there are so many people that I did not speak to about the Lord. And I could remember through my past all these different people that I didn't have any tracks, or maybe I was just full of my own cares and I didn't even think about giving these people a track. And so I had to confess and then ask the Lord about these different names.
Mm.
Maybe the Lord would open a door so that I could. But anyways, I think that's the other thing is that with the gospel, we go through these ebbs and flows. And sometimes, we're more stirred up. And sometimes we realize, oh, I haven't spoken to anybody about the Lord in such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Lord, what about this cubicle person next to me,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a long answer. But
That's okay.
yeah.
And then lastly, what is your favorite thing to do with your husband? How do you guys like to wind down and spend time with each other? For me, I love watching movies with my wife. That's our thing. But for you, what is it?
my husband loves history. And so we like history documentaries,
Oh, cool.
and even history that is like, oh, like mysteries with history,
Mm.
you know, like mix in like, oh, well, this kind of doesn't make sense, you know? So, I wonder if there's another theory about how this went. So we
That's
like
nice.
those kind of things.
That's awesome. That's cool. What was the latest one you watched?
We like Graham Hancock. I don't know if you've ever heard about him, but he is not an archaeologist. He is a journalist,
Oh, okay.
but he just has some questions about just different historical things, from ancient history. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, we just find that kind of fascinating.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah. That's interesting.
yeah.
Well, that's all I had. Yeah, that was the last one.
I'm sorry I
No.
talked so much.
No,
It's okay.
we thank you for opening up and sharing. Yeah. Great
Yeah.
having you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really
Awesome.
hope, I don't know why the Lord did what he did, but
Amen.
I really hope that, especially some single people can be helped,
Yeah. I feel the same way. I
Yeah.
think people will be helped, and it might be maybe some of our followers can reach out to you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Maybe they
open.
will after
Yeah.
they listen to your episode.
Yeah.
I
Amen.
know there's
I'm
a lot
open.
of people that need that help. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for joining us again, and we'll see you next week. Keep liking, commenting, DMing us if there's anything you want to hear about. We're all ears. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.